That one says.
Test, test, test.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's council committee meeting. My name is Stephanie Meyer. I am a council member from Ward 3 and will be the chair of the meeting this evening. Councilmember Zimmerman is absent. Besides myself, the committee members here tonight are Jim Neighbor, Ward 1, Eric Jenkins, Ward 2, Mike Kemling, Ward 2, Justin Adrian, Ward 3, Nikki Sandifer, Ward 4, and Lindsay Constance, Ward 4. Before we begin our agenda, I'd like to explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input. If you would like to speak to the committee at any of those times, please go to the podium. I will ask that you state your name and address for the record, and then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear you, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes, and after you are finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. There are 4 items on tonight's agenda. The first item is to discuss the CARS program from 2019 to 2023 and federal call for projects 2021 to 2022. The CARS program provides funds to the cities of Johnson County to construct and maintain their major arterials. Each year, the cities submit a 5-year road improvement plan to Johnson County. In addition, there is federal grant money available in future years. Staff has identified projects to submit for both, and Paul Lindstrom, Senior Project Engineer, will make a presentation and answer questions. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Since we've got new council members, we're going to go through a little bit of history
on the CARS program. I know this has been up to the City Council for many years, and it's a great program, and it allows us to do some projects we probably wouldn't be able to do without the funding. So just briefly go through some history of both the CARS program and the federal program, so we'll get to that later. So this program has been around since 1983. So there's been, I meant to get the number of dollars, but it's roughly $15 million a year for 35 years. So if you think about how much money that has been put into Johnson County because of the Board of Commissions back in 1983 decided that we wanted to kind of unify all the streets and the cities and come up with a program that funds basically new streets and corridors throughout the entire Johnson County area. So back in the day, they approved this program. It's been a very popular program for many years, and it is a 50% match, but we're still trying to take advantage of that. I know that there's other programs like SMAC that is a little higher percent, but still this is a good mechanism for us to fund projects. So just this last year, actually this year, we have $15.7 million going to different cities within Johnson County. So it's a good program as far as money-wise. It goes into our community. That's paid through their gas tax, their sugar gas tax, and of course their local county support. Like I said, there's 50%, CARS pays 50% for projects. It doesn't include the design, the right-of-way, or any utility costs, but it does cover construction and construction engineering costs and inspections. So it does pay a pretty good portion of what we call project costs. The type of projects, it's a pretty good range. A good example is we're using some CARS projects on Neiman Road, and so they'll be paying for a lot of the streetscape items. So it covers everything from overlays to traffic signals, to sidewalks, to streetscape, bike paths, street lighting. So it's a pretty good range of opportunity to take advantage of the funding. So with that, this is the map. I know it's a little difficult to see, but the reason I brought it up is that this is the entire county. And so every one of those streets in red is a street that qualifies. There's only so many streets that qualify. You have to have either has to be an arterial or a major collector. And so you can see Shawnee is, there's my arrow here, but Shawnee is just the very upper end of this map. So you can see throughout Johnson County that there's a lot of eligible streets. These are popular funds. So it's a competition almost every year to try and get these funds. And so it's important for us to submit projects every year. So right now on our CIP, which was approved last November, these are the projects that we have slated for CARS projects. Every spring, the county asks for updated projects. Really, the only one that truly gets funded is the next year. So 2019 will be the next project that we'll actually get yay or nay on. The rest of the projects are just kind of placeholders for future years. But so these are the current ones on the CIP, and it's taken directly from the CIP. So our next project shown on the CIP for 19 is the 75th Street and Quivira corridor. Actually, this has been extended all the way to Schweitzer now. So at that point, we called it just the intersection to take care of the old signal, but we decided to be better to do the entire corridor all the way to Schweitzer and kind of spruce that up. So that's been a new project. 43rd Street, that has been the economic development area out there in northwest Shawnee. So hopefully that does trigger next year for us, but there is CARS money for that. So, and then of course the rest of the projects we have in our CIP, and this is information that's all in the packet too. So a few changes that we did from last year. Now, like I said, it's kind of odd because we talk about CARS in the spring, and we talk about the CIP in the fall, so they don't quite match. So there's always overlap between projects. So every year we have some changes. This year, we're recommending changing the Monticello Road projects. We actually have those in 2 phases. We want to shift that a year so that we can take advantage of some of the federal funds that are going to be available potentially, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then so that those two projects would shift. We'd still ask for CARS money, but we'd also ask for federal money on those two. And then we added a new project for 2022. It's been a very popular project in the past. You know, it's a high dollar project. It's from Midland Drive, from Barker to I-435. A lot of bicycles on it, lots of activity with the golf course, and we think that is been a pretty popular discussed item to put on our CIP. So that is currently shown for 2022. We're going to ask for federal money for that also. So we'll get CARS and Fed money, hopefully, if it scores well. And that's roughly about a $12.5 million project. So it's a pretty big project for Shawnee. One of the other things we did too is just east of the Midland Drive project, it's a mill and overlay project, but that's also CARS eligible. We're pushing that another year to 2023. I think we're pretty sure that that'll last till then. If not, we'll have to reorganize our plan for mill and overlay. And of course, the last thing that we've done is revise all the costs throughout the whole program, make sure that all costs are up to date so that when we get to the construction, we'll have enough funds. So here's what we're proposing. This will kind of go back now into the CIP with the changes I just talked about. Without going through every one of these, it kind of tells you how much funding is in each line item and where that's coming from. Like I said, that is in the packet too, so we had a chance to look at that. So it gives the updates of adding Barker Midland Drive to it and the Monticello changes to it. So this just depicts the map of the years from 2019 to 2023. So you can see in the purple we've got a couple of different projects. And then the 2020 will be just the one project. We hope that scores well because I know that's been another topic about putting signals at the intersection at I-435 and Johnson Drive. So we're hoping that that gets done then. And then, of course, the other project we talked about. Any questions on the CARS part of it before I move on to the federal part of it? Any questions on that? Okay. So with the federal program, there's actually 3 categories that we can apply funds for. And every couple of years, they ask cities to apply for funds. And these are coming from the federal government, they'll be transferred to KDOT and go through KDOT. So a lot more requirements to do these projects, but if the dollar's right, it seems like there is an advantage to the city to try and get these dollars. So there's 3 types. We have what's called the STP funds. That's been the most popular. That's where most of the money's at. You have the CMAQ funds, and then you have the TAP funds, which are now called TA funds. Just quickly, if you haven't been to Mark's website, you can go to their page and you can get all the information you need about these 3 programs. But you can see here where the funding level is for Kansas, and this is just metropolitan, this isn't the entire state. So you can see a lot of the money, competing for money is tied up in the STP funds. And then there's $5 million for CMAQ and $2.4 million for the TAP funds. So these are the same as CARS. We have to apply for it. We have to compete for it. And there's certain. This is definitely more stringent of application process, but we'll know sometime later this summer if we are pretty good on these projects. I will just explain that. So as you go through this, there's this thing that's full of information. So we'll start just as a top one there. The CMAQ funds are mostly for traffic signals, anything to do with moving cars more so they don't sit and create air pollution. So really anything to do with air pollution and anything at quality of like it says, quality of air. So a lot of that you see people like if they're redoing an intersection, they want to make an intersection better and increase the signal timings so that people aren't staying at the intersection a lot. So I see that as one of the big items. The STP funds are set aside for bigger projects, like if you want to widen a street or if you're wanting to develop a new street for that matter. As long as it qualifies under that category, it's endless. I mean, you can do a street, you can do a sidewalk program at too, but the ones we see more is we're trying to increase capacity, widen it, increase the width of lanes, and do major projects. Hence where that's all the money's at. And then the TA program is specifically for walkability, bicycles, sidewalks, ADA, those type of miscellaneous programs that are hard to fund by yourself because they can be expensive. So there's a mixture, and even within those categories, it gets kind of complicated because there are subcategories within those. So I did a very broad explanation of that, but like I said, you can go into this website and you can get a lot more information. And so this kind of just highlights that a little more, and it talks about the projects that we're going to be having and what we're going to be asking for. So the Monticello Road project, the first phase, will be asking for STP funds, and then the Midland Drive project will be asking for money for that. And then the CMAQ, now the only one that is on the CIP right now is Midland Drive. The CMAQ funds and the TA funds are new projects we just kind of come up with because we would like to submit something that we think is important to the city. And one of them is traffic connectivity out west. So putting fiber between signals so they can talk to each other, some connectivity. And so that what it'll do is that'll improve travel times. And like I said, not staying at the intersection too long so it reduces emissions. And then lastly, we had some ADA, identified some ADA improvements at a lot of the intersections, especially with signals. And so we'd like to improve those too. And a lot of those are near schools, communities where the elderly are at, and like large pedestrian populations like parks and whatnot. So this is just kind of a little summary of those costs, what we're requesting from these applications, and what the city share would be. As I said, Midland Drive is a pretty large project, so that would be a big ticket item for us if we decide to do that in 2022. With that, if you have any questions, I would like to point out first though, in your packet, I think it's sheet number 9, page number 9, there are a list of projects we put in there just for everybody to keep thinking about for when we go through the budget process and CIP process, that there are other needs out there that we do not include in our CIP currently, and we have not applied for any additional funding. So we know that there's a lot of priorities out here, but we want to make sure you guys have an opportunity to set those priorities so they can be discussed later. So
great.
With that, any questions?
Eric?
Just a couple questions. I want to ask some clarifications. Now, I was reading the packet, it said 80% for federal funds, 80-20 match.
That's correct.
And of course, the cars are 50-50 match.
That's correct.
Well, I just saw that last slide. Those numbers, but like our share was awful big. That last slide you put there.
Some of this, as far as our share?
Yes.
For example, like Monticello Road, that is just phase 1. And how it works is that you have to take the federal share first. And then what's remaining, you can get CARS money for it. So if that makes sense. So you can't double dip into funding.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular project you question about?
But you're showing like on Monticello, we're showing 1.7 million city share with up to 4 million in potential funds.
That is phase 1 only. That goes, and that's like a $5.7 million.
That's not an 80-20 or anything like that, or not even, of course, CARS be a 50, but still, it's not even, still doesn't work. I don't know, it just didn't work out for me there. I don't understand it. I understand the numbers, but I don't understand the city share when it comes up with I, like Midland Drive, STP, potential funds, $4 million, city share 6.5.
Keep in mind, the federal and the CARD money does not pay for design, right-of-way, all those other soft costs so when we're talking about the funding from the feds and the CARDs, they don't pay for any of that. Okay. So I have to add all those other features in the right-of-way acquisition. Monticello Road, we bought right-of-way years ago, but all the temporary easements have expired, so we've got money in that. There's probably $500,000 in that loan. We have to go back and redesign some things. So yeah, there's a lot of soft costs that are not included in that. So it's hard to compare that. You're correct.
The other question I had was talked about breaking Monticello into two pieces because it didn't do well in the grant application the last time. And I just wanted to get some more information from you. Not that it affected it, just curious, basically. Sure. On where are we falling short on in the competition with the other communities?
So years ago, I think it was 2008, 2009, we actually did get approved for Monticello Road. I think it was like $5 million. We had to turn it back because of the economy. But they have changed the rules on how they look at those applications. Now they're looking at bicycle-friendly, walkability, transit areas. They're highlighting that big time. Before, that wasn't even part of the application process. They kind of changed their focus. And so they want everything to be more, and of course, Monticello doesn't have a whole lot of traffic either. It has some, but they're really looking at high traffic areas now and how to solve issues with mainly the bicycles and the pedestrians. And so that segment is kind of a danger zone. The second segment of Monticello was under brand new land, so of course that wouldn't score anything really because it doesn't even exist today. So that's why we think if we break it up, it'll score a lot better instead of considering the entire project.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Mike?
Yeah, I know we discussed the CIP and the council's changed a little since then and CARD relates to CIP. But before I was on the council, I know Mickey was here, maybe even Jim, that this Monticello project tried to go through and it didn't. I would love to see maybe some additional information on how we've overcome the difficulties that came up the first time we tried to do Monticello South. So it doesn't have to be tonight.
Like an oil pipeline or something?
That was one of them. There's $1 million worth of pipeline that we have to relocate because it is in private easement. But at that time, I believe it was completely just money. And we couldn't afford to debt service it, so we had to drop it.
Okay, so
even with the $5 million federal money, it was still an $18 million project total at the time, and we just couldn't go. They might have saved us on that one. I don't know. Yeah, with their delay, they might have saved us from getting into a debt service problem. So yeah, but that still is out there, so we would still have to deal with that in that phase one.
So do we have assurances, or any kind of assurances that we would be more successful working with Southern Star than we were previously?
Yeah, we were so close. We actually had a contract with them.
Okay.
So I'm confident that we could do that because I'm sure their plan didn't change. You know. Yes, I don't want to rehash that with you, but yes.
Right.
Not for sure that we would have that project done before Carol left, so that happens.
Right. Is there any other discussion by the council? Right. Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, the recommended action is to forward this item to the March 19th, 2018 special city council meeting for consideration. I will accept a motion.
Removed. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. All right, the second item is an update on the Johnson County landfill odors. On September 11th, 2017, the governing body approved the extension of a special use permit, SUP 13810, to allow landfilling operations and requested an update about odor complaints at the 6-month mark. Mike Hay, Waste Management, will make a brief presentation and answer questions. Welcome, Mr. Hay.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council and this committee. 6 months ago, this city council issued us a 1-year extension on our SUP, and at that time, They asked us to return in 6 months just for an update, so that's what I'm here doing. This will be brief, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments, or listen to any comments you might have. It's been a good 6 months. And quite frankly, it's been a pretty good 2017. If you look at the staff report, I agree with the accounting that there's been a 42% reduction in odor complaints at the site. That's comparing 2016 to 2017. I think it's more important to look at the last 6 months, though, since the SUP been issued, and just to show you that the trend is still getting better. In the last 6 months, so looking at September through February, there were 81 complaints this last period versus 219 the period before. So that's a 63% reduction. And you got to look at those months in comparison like that because it is seasonal. It wouldn't be fair to do it any other way. In the last 2 years, we've made significant changes out at the site. First and foremost, the gas collection system. We're updating that every year, usually 2 times a year. That's putting in additional wells, collection piping to collect that gas. We've increased the size of our flare 3 times since 2015. We put in a new flare in 2016 and bought a temporary flare to get us by because we saw the amount of gas we were collecting ramping up. That had to do with, if you read through all the old literature, all the wetness that we had, the additional rain created a lot more gas. We believe we're ahead of that now. We've installed a larger flare that's big enough to handle all the gas that the site will ever produce. So we shouldn't need to replace it other than for just old age. We've also invested in a new grinder, and that's important because in June, July, and August, a significant source of odors at the site is the yard waste operations. We take in yard waste, grass clippings, brush, leaves in the fall, and the grass can be fairly problematic. We recognize the need to process that waste quickly and efficiently and have that instance when there could be odors from it be very short. There is always exposure when you're taking bags of people's grass and processing it. Once you get it processed, it sort of stabilizes and we can add odor neutralizer to it and then we're out of the woods for that. But while we're grinding it, there's that exposure. So to be able to do that quick and get it over with real fast, that's helped us significantly during those months. Usually it isn't an issue in the winter and even the fall. Several new odor neutralizing systems. I've talked about them before in front of the council. This is something that we'll always be looking at, new and better stuff. Technology changes a lot. It changes very quickly. So my commitment to the city of Shawnee and to my company is to always stay on top of that, make sure that we're exploring the best things. Some stuff doesn't seem to work at all. Some stuff placates us for a while, and some stuff really works well. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're using misters, foggers, direct application of an agent to the active face of the landfill to control odors now. We'll keep exploring those things. Our landfill operations have changed significantly as well. In the last couple of years, we started reducing the size of our active face. The active face, for those who haven't been to the site, is just it's where we're actively manipulating the waste. The larger the active face, the larger exposure there is to odors. So if you keep that smaller and to the minimum size that we need to satisfy our customers, that's the right thing to do. So we're shrinking it down to very small size for our nighttime operations and our weekend operations when we're not as busy. We have to open it up a little bigger during the day, regular weekday. We're also, we reviewed how we handled sludge at the site back in late 2016 after some odor episodes that were particularly related to wastewater treatment sludge coming into the site, and we determined we could do much better there. So we've completely revamped how we accept sludge. It starts with communication with the producers of the sludge. We're working very closely with those wastewater treatment plants that produce a sludge that have a strong odor. We're asking them to do some pre-treatment. We're working with them if they need help with that. It's a lot of those technologies that we're aware of. They are wastewater treatment professionals. They know how to control odors themselves too. We just got to make sure they're doing it. We also have how we handle that at the active face. When I first got to the site, there wasn't any real rule, so when a sludge truck came in, he could just dump just like he was a regular garbage truck. And for a waste that has the potential for odors like sludge does, we can't allow that. So we have a specific spot that we pick out each day. It's communicated to all my employees. We only allow one sludge truck to dump at a time. That allows us to have complete control of it. We can spray that material down with an odor neutralizer if it appears to be particularly strong, or we can make sure it's buried and covered real quick to mitigate that as quick as possible. We're always exposed when you're dumping wastewater treatment sludge. We also developed a practice of sort of looking in the mirror, doing a site review, and we do these very often. We often can find odors at the site long before we're impacting our neighbors, and that's the time to act on them and get them fixed, get them under control before they start impacting the neighbors. So we do that very often. A lot of it revolves around our gas collection system, reviewing it. Is it effective? Are we seeing failures? And we can catch those failures before they happen, fix whatever needs to be fixed. And that's something new that we're doing. So I leave you with the commitment to continue to do better. The trend is certainly going in the right direction. We believe it'll continue that way, and the promise to stay diligent and never take our eye off the ball. This is not an easy job, and to think we've fixed it all and now we just go back to business as usual, I don't want this council to think that's what we're saying. Any questions?
Jim?
Yeah, I just would offer, I know you've been there, what now, 2 years, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate, I know you guys have been working very diligently to work on this, and particularly your efforts to do it, and obviously it's showing up because of the not as many complaints, but the other thing, you're very proactive methodology going about to stop it before it spreads too far. And I know you'll keep doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would echo Jim's comments. As I'll say, in the 4.5 years I've been on council, this is the first 6-month period I haven't heard from any residents about complaints about odor. So kudos on that. And I think the changes you've made regarding the grass clippings and also the sludge have made a big difference out in my neighborhood on the other side of Landfill. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, just a thumbs up. All right, thank you, Mike.
I would like to say we always offer tours. I took Lindsay around. Justin, I'm hoping to get you out there, and I haven't even met Matt yet. But everyone else has been there at least once. But I think it's really helpful when we're talking about this stuff to kind of see it from the inside and understand when I say active base and yard waste and what we're really talking about. So, and that's for anyone. If you have constituents that are concerned or maybe just curious, give them my contact information. We'll make time for a visit to the site.
Thank you. It's a surprisingly interesting tour. So thank you.
When it says attack sludge, they attack.
We've seen it. All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, this item is for informational purposes only, so no action is necessary. The third item tonight is to discuss vape e-cigarette stores. A concern has been expressed over the increased number of vape stores located in the city. Staff has completed research regarding the methods used by other cities that have addressed the issue. Staff is seeking direction on the issue. And as we get into it with Paul, I just wanted to note I've talked to Matt and also Vicki, and I know that the age component of this was listed in your packet. We really felt like we needed more time to let the public know that we would be discussing the age of tobacco sales and e-vape kind of together. So we have tabled the age portion of it until the May Council Committee meeting, and we'll be communicating that to the public as well so they have time to weigh in, pro and con. So with that, Paul Chaffee, Planning Director, will make a presentation and answer questions. Welcome, Paul.
Good evening. Tonight's discussion is on vape shops and primarily on location requirements or some requirements that we want to place on vape stores. This is a type of product that is available. So basically, to start out with some definitions, a vape shop is generally defined as a retail store that specializes in the sale of electronic cigarette products. So those could be the e-cigarette devices or it could be the liquids. E-cigarettes are handheld electronic devices that attempt to create feeling of tobacco, smoking tobacco. Works by heating a liquid to generate an aerosol, commonly called a vapor, that they're used when inhales. And the definition of an e-liquid is liquid nicotine, although I do want to mention that there are some products that may not specifically include nicotine that are out there today. And that liquid nicotine is diluted by adding flavorings, and other products generally mixed with e-liquids include propylene glycol, glycerin, and water. There are 5 vape shops currently located in the city of Shawnee, and as you can generally tell, they're along the spine of Shawnee Mission Parkway between Neiman Road and Malley Road. There are 3 that are generally located around Rivera Road and Shawnee Mission Parkway, and there's one out by the Walmart in the strip center, and then there's one that's in Lehman Plaza, which is the first shopping center north of Shawnee Mission Parkway on Lehman Road. Other merchandise that vape stores generally carry, or amenities that they provide. They often provide lounges or bars where patrons can taste various flavors of the e-liquid or relax while smoking or having a drink. It's also common that they have other type of merchandise such as shirts, keychains, etc. are available. And the sale of products that may be considered drug paraphernalia may be prohibited for sale by a change in the ordinance. So one of the attachments that you had this evening was a draft ordinance that legal staff had prepared that would limit the sale of items that may be considered as drug paraphernalia. Location. We have several types of businesses that we've taken special location requirements on. We have for massage establishments, we have the limitation that they be in commercial highway zoning district, or if they're in a commercial neighborhood, they're with a chiropractor or a doctor's office or a related medical facility. We have the cash advance services. So it's a concern over the number and the proliferation. So we adopted an ordinance that while they're still allowed where banking institutions and financial institutions are located, that they had to be located a mile apart. And I think you've seen in the last few years, rather than seeing more cash advance services, that the cash advance services businesses are closing. I know 4 or 5 in Shawnee that aren't here anymore, and I think some of that's just a factor of the economy, that the times are better, more folks are able to have a job and not in the financial position that they may need to get the cash advances at the extremely high rates of interest. Then we also have the adult entertainment establishments, which we don't have any, but we have a requirement on that of 200 feet from a residential area or a daycare or school. So I think each one of those has its own reasons of why we took different approaches to all of them. So taking a look at what other cities provided and what staff at least perceived the concern of the governing body was the location of vape stores next to or nearby businesses that cater to youth and children, such as Little Monkey Business or Sky Zone. Overland Park, rather than limiting the vape shops to a certain zoning district, took the tack of limiting location of vape shops to freestanding buildings in zoning districts where the sale of tobacco products were allowed. By doing this, it eliminates any conflicts with grocery stores or other places that sell cigarettes, or chewing tobacco, or cigars. Generally speaking, rents paid for pad sites are generally of a value that vape stores would probably be unwilling to enter into a lease agreement. They're just basically too expensive. And such a restriction also lessens the likelihood of their location near a business that attracts or caters to children. So being in a freestanding building, it's not going to be next door or 2 doors down from a shop. I think the thing that's important to note, like with the other ones, we can't just say no vape stores. We have to provide them the opportunity to locate somewhere in the community. And I think Overland Park's model seemed to be one that was good and reasonable and that perhaps addressed what our primary concern was and what we were hearing from our constituents. So some of the discussion topics, if you feel that you'd like to regulate the location better and based on an Overland Park model, have that discussion. If that's the case, also in your packet, the legal staff has done a draft ordinance that would adopt that type of procedure, or if we want to modify or change, that's fine also. And then discuss whether we want to regulate the other types of merchandise that can be sold in wood shops. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions? Mike?
Well, I don't know if this is a question for you or for Alice, but the subject of drug paraphernalia came up. Is there already state laws or regulations about that?
We have Lisa or Alice communicate.
It's a very gray area when you get into drug paraphernalia in a tobacco or a vape shop, because when you walk in, something that someone may consider drug paraphernalia is legal if it's used for tobacco. So when you look at whether you're going to consider that item to be more of a drug paraphernalia or legitimate tobacco use, there's really only one court case that really addresses this. You look at the environment of the store. Is there a drug culture evident with posters, magazines, T-shirts, whatever it may be, that really is promoting this to a drug paraphernalia use rather than legitimately for tobacco. And so that's where the enforcement issue comes in. And a lot of people I know sometimes will walk into those stores, see those items, and not realize the gray area that exists with that. But that's kind of how the courts look at how you enforce it. And they have been successfully put in place and enforced over in parks. Yes. Yes. And our the ordinance that we have now, you could maybe get there. I think when you read it, it looks like it's geared a little bit more towards a law enforcement car stop. You find a pipe, is it, what is it, residue and all of that sort of thing. Whereas in Overland Park, they just specifically talk about also, you can't be a retail shop and sell paraphernalia. But our ordinance already does include some of those things you look at in the environment of whether you would charge someone with selling it.
Mark?
No, you're still up there. It seems like the issue to me is defining paraphernalia. That's where you really get into trouble there, because that's going to be a fine line. Like you're saying, the state law covers certain things, and you're looking at it, well, pull your own cigarettes, but that's also used for marijuana. I mean, you got all these things, and I'm not real good at this drug stuff because I don't have much experience or background in it, but I don't like drug paraphernalia being sold in the store, but I don't know if I'm confident to sit here and say what is drug paraphernalia. It's hardcore, that's something we really want to regulate, and what's, maybe a peripheral item or one of these gray area items, or I don't know what to say with it.
You hit it. It's very complicated. If you look at the section that's before the definitions that you have in there, because we do talk about simulated controlled substances that never define it, and so we put a definition in there. And then that very short 90630 that's in there talking about this. If you look at 20 that's in between there, you'll see how complicated that is with listing all the different types of things that can be considered paraphernalia, all the different types of things that are prohibited drugs and controlled substances. And then you get into the simulated controlled substances, which I think we also had an individual talking about that or complaining about that too. And then again, you get into a little bit of problem. I think Missouri does allow the marijuana oil for medical purposes, whereas Kansas does not. And so then you get into those simulated marijuana oils and that. So yes, it's extremely complicated.
So is there any actual document or reference document or whatever that would give a basic list of things that are just, there's no way around it. These are drug paraphernalia items and, then we could, focus in on something like that.
I mean, the state statute doesn't, we reference the state statute in a lot of ours just because that's equally as complicated, just to keep ours a little bit more simple. And I don't know that there's something that you could say specifically, this is drug paraphernalia, because technically if you can use it with tobacco, that's just the way it's been defined through the years. It would perhaps take a bigger change at the state level to change something like that. And the FDA is kind of catching up with e-cigarettes and things like that. I think it was in 2009, cigarettes were banned from adding candy and fruit flavors to their cigarettes because it was found that was a way to market sugar. Mm-hmm. Now you have the e-cigarettes that have kind of the same issue, and the FDA is kind of catching up with that to see how they're going to regulate it or what.
But the ordinance that you all provided has been used in Overland Park successfully. A similar one anyway.
Yeah, that's the requirement that they use.
That one just talk about the location, the other part too.
There are two draft ordinances in the packet. One is related to paraphernalia, the other is location.
We had kind of two sets of complaints. One was the number of e-cigarette stores. The other one was, I went into a store and holy cow, I saw drug paraphernalia. How can we sell that? And so that started us down the path of how do we regulate it and can we regulate it. And so I think our ordinance really is just to make it very clear that a retail establishment cannot do that.
Vicki?
Two questions. One is, in that ordinance, is it bringing the age from 18 to 21?
Yeah, there's nothing with age.
Nothing with age. But I'm wondering if we were to address, age from 18 to 21 on vapes or tobacco, would that also include drug paraphernalia?
Well, drug paraphernalia is illegal no matter what it is.
Okay, I'm saying in the paraphernalia that would resemble drug paraphernalia. That we're saying is good for tobacco. Would that change that to a 21 sale?
I don't think the age would affect either one of these ordinance changes.
Right. Okay.
It would still be paraphernalia if you look at the how the store is set up. How is the clerk marketing it? That's another thing that we have to look at. And then with the standalone, I don't think the age.
Well, what my point was is if it's even for tobacco, if you're limiting the age of tobacco to 21, would that limit the sales of tobacco using products to 21?
I would imagine.
I think that's part of the discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Okay.
that'll be a conversation for May. Anything to do with, again, the age, we're going to hold off until May.
Right.
Any other questions or discussion from the council? Yeah, Mike?
I actually went out to one of these yesterday, just curiosity, and I was surprised how many signs on the door said you had to be 18 even to go inside. So I don't understand, are we afraid that a kid's going to go from monkey business and get sold this e-liquid that's under 18? Is that the fear? That's already breaking the law, right?
I don't know that a parent couldn't bring a child. If a parent was going to stop and get their e-cigarette or their liquid or whatever it is, they could certainly bring their child.
And our fear is that the child's going to vape tobacco then? Mm-hmm. Is there a fear that the child's going to vape tobacco, that their parent's going to give them a nicotine product? I don't understand what we're trying to prevent. And we don't want kids to have it, but not going from monkey business. The place I was at was very adamant you had to be 18 to purchase. So what's our fear?
Right.
So if we don't want it near an establishment that caters to kids, what's our fear? What's the correlation?
You have 18-year-old kids that are still in high school that's in there buying this, bringing it into their friends in high school that are 14, 15, 16, 17 years old.
So being your monkey business doesn't
Or I
change
think
that.
maybe more like, I think of Power Play or something like that when I think of establishments that would cater to young people.
And it's, obviously, it's illegal for an adult to give a child, a substance containing nicotine. The vape liquid.
I don't know if a parent-child, if that would be, I mean, a parent
An
can allow a
adult.
child to drink underage.
Right, but an adult, like their friend, their 18-year-old friend, even if their
Someone
17-year-old
not
friend.
related, but if they didn't relate it.
I do think, okay.
Yeah, Nancy, go
I
ahead.
do think it's interesting when you look at the map, how close they are, first of all, in proximity to one another, also close to the high schools, very close to Shawnee Mission Northwest. And I just shared with the council, I reached out to a principal, an assistant principal, and a teacher at 3 different schools in Shawnee just to ask about, what they have noticed. And they do see it as being a pretty big problem impacting their students. So, I just kind of find that interesting. The location, I think, is important. Not that they couldn't still get it if it wasn't on Shawnee Mission Parkway, but I don't know as a council we want to encourage more. I mean, we have 5 already in the city, so that's a lot.
Any further discussion from the council? All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, here we are. So, what is the will of the body? Are we interested in forwarding either or both of these ordinances as they are with changes? What do we feel like, Eric?
Well, when you look at these, what Overland Park's done is something to the middle of the road. It's not putting themselves on much of a limb, and I think it's something that's probably workable. And really leaning in favor of what they've got here, so proposing this stuff.
I agree with you. And you're referring to both ordinances then?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I see shaking of heads. Would you care to, Justin?
Okay, so I have a question. If we're going to change this to standalone buildings, what do we do with the current building or businesses that are already in establishment?
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
I believe the ordinance already states that businesses that are currently located in their present location are allowed to remain and aren't required to
So
close down.
grandfathered in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
As
what
of
I
the
read. I just
effective
want to make
date
sure.
of whatever the date of the ordinance is going to be. Continuous.
Okay. So it seemed as though we had an affirmative direction. If someone would like to make a motion to that effect, Eric?
Move to forward it to the council meeting,
Both ordinances?
both ordinances.
Second.
Oh, yeah, okay. There's a request to do them standalone, so I will take first a motion regarding the location of vape shops.
Okay, though. We revised the motion to discuss the regulation of the location of vape shops.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
All right, motion passes. And I will take a secondary motion regarding the ordinance on the types of merchandise that can be sold in vape shops. Do I have a motion?
Move to pass it along to the council.
That works, yep. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, thank you, Paul. Okay, the final item is to discuss short-term rentals. The city clerk has received several inquiries from residents regarding the city's regulations and/or requirements regarding the use of their home as a short-term rental. Staff is seeking direction on this issue. Paul Chaffee, Planning Director, will make a brief presentation and answer questions. Hello again.
Bring that over, Stephen. Just to let you all know, we haven't had a lot of problems with the short-term rental, but it's been a topic that other governing bodies have discussed a little bit, and so we just thought it'd be a good time to address the issue of short-term rental. So basically, what is a short-term rental, and what's sort of the history of it, and a short-term rental is a property where sleeping accommodations are provided on a short-term basis, generally from 1 night to 1 month, and the owner may or may not be present during the stay. The rental may be for an entire house or for single rooms, and we've done a sort of a scan on 3 of the major use accommodation brokers or short-term accommodation brokers. We found we have about between 12 and 15 that are actively being listed, so there's not a lot of activity going on. Short-term rentals are generally obtained through the use of an accommodation broker, such as Airbnb, Vrbo, Homo, Flipkey. Rental agreements are executed by the broker and often include a list of rules or conditions for the rental of the property. If the owner of the home does not reside at the residence, there generally is no personal contact between the property owner and the renter. So a lot of times it's just a signed agreement blind both to the other, and the person who's doing the rental agrees to your conditions. The city of Shawnee, like most cities, have requirements and zoning regulations regarding borders and definitions of families. In Shawnee, we do permit a property owner who lives in the residence to rent to one boarder or roomer, and that's just something that they can do. The owner of a residence who does not live in the home may enter into a contract to rent the home to a family, and a family is defined as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit that contains one or more persons by blood, marriage, or adoption, or not more than 4 persons necessarily related by blood, marriage, or adoption. So if we generally put it as roommates. So you could rent to a family and they could have eight people in their family, and that's okay. Or if you didn't live in the home and you wanted to rent rooms, room by room, you could do that for up to 4 persons. And after that, it's no longer considered to be a single-family residence, but it's considered to be a multifamily home, and then you have the zoning regulations that would kick into gear. Some subdivisions may have deed restrictions regarding the use of homes in the subdivisions, and they prohibit rental of property. They may have other rules and regulations that could affect the ability of a homeowner to rent their property. And the homes associations, regardless of what we do, can continue to enforce their private restrictions as long as they're not less restrictive than, sort of along the lines where you have the subdivisions that say you can have a 4-foot fence. The city as a whole, we allow a 6-foot fence, but the homes association can't say we're going to allow 8-foot fence and overrule the city's requirements. Communities such as Overland Park, Lenexa, and Olathe have rental registration and inspection programs for all types of rentals. They're time-consuming, expensive to operate. That's why the city of Shawnee has never done that. The fees that they collect generally don't cover the cost of the programs. The owner of a single-family home in these cities that provides short-term or long-term rental registers with the city as a rental property. So that's how they know what houses out there are being used for short-term, or for that matter, long-term rentals. In Shawnee, we require a business license for duplex and multifamily units, and we've done that for years, at least 30 years worth. The fees based according to square footage of the structure. Single-family rentals aren't licensed, but using data available from Johnson County, we can determine, for the most part, which single-family homes are rental homes. And what we do as part of our proactive code enforcement, at least every year we drive by those homes that show up on the list where the address of the home is different than the address of the property owner. That's sort of a giveaway that it's probably a rental property. And so we do an on-site inspection at least once a year on all of those homes. And there's about 2,300 of them. Our recent search found that currently 12 single-family homes are listed on the accommodation broker websites. And like I said before, short-term rentals are listed for both individual rooms or for entire homes. We do have one resident of a home that currently provides an individual room for short-term rental that's obtained an occupational license. The clerks, staff, and planning staff, we haven't pursued notifying the other property owners whose homes were identified on the accommodations website pending direction from the governing body that you'd like us to do. Individuals can enter into agreements with accommodation brokers to collect the sales tax and transient guest taxes. And recently, Airbnb, toward the end of last year, entered into agreement with the state to collect the applicable taxes on short-term rentals made on their website. there's a potential for the city also entering into agreement with Airbnb to collect the transient guest tax. So that's something relatively new that the state kind of views Airbnbs more as being I don't want to say hotel, but that type of use. But not all the accommodation brokers have entered into such agreements, and some just, won't do it. So you have to rely on the individual, which later on we'll mention if we want to register those businesses for as part of what we do. We can do some education to them to let them know that what taxes they need to collect and that kind of thing. So the city of Shawnee received $78 from the state for collections that were made. Not much, but they didn't enter into the agreement until late fall. So some folks at least are doing what they're supposed to do. iCompass, which is our agenda software, has a module that can assist in identification of properties that's on the short-term rental websites. Cost of the module is about $7,200. We frankly can do it a lot cheaper and a lot quicker, so we're not going to recommend that. So I guess the items for discussion are: is there a desire to require some form of licensing or regulation for property to use as short-term rentals? Should the form of licensing be by obtaining an occupational license as a home occupation and paying a $50 fee, which is the general case, is the case that you pay just for a general occupation license with the city, and that would enable us at least to collect the name of the property owner and some contact information, and then provide them, materials that make sure that they understand that they're subject to collecting the transient guest tax and the state sales tax, and it needs to be remitted to the state. And then the last one I sort of hit on is if you wish us to pursue the purchase of the iCompass module, or just go ahead and continue the periodic practice of reviewing the accommodation websites like we currently do. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or discussion? Yeah, Jim?
Question, if we instituted the short-term rental with a business license, does that trigger more codes inspection?
Probably not, but it would let us, it would add that property to the list of rental. Right now, we probably wouldn't know, because in most cases, the owner of the property and the address are the same, so it wouldn't trigger anything. So it would trigger at least the drive-by to do the inspection.
Eric?
Yeah, looking at this, I'm not really that much in favor of Airbnb type establishments and so on within the city. If I own a house and I'm in a subdivision and somebody's got an Airbnb next to me, and we have people running a place every other day or so, different groups of people, that doesn't seem appropriate. It doesn't seem appropriate amount of respect for the homeowners that are adjacent to that. When you look at an Airbnb, I'm kind of thinking of some place that's a little bit distant from the other houses. It's on a quiet setting, maybe on a lake or something, and people can go there and stay, and it's idyllic and all that jazz. And that's nice, but if it starts becoming where homeowners out here in their subdivisions are becoming rental establishments for people to come and stay in their house like a hotel, basically, I have a negative view of that. I don't really like that idea very much at all. I don't think that really protects our homeowners that have their major investment in their home. So I couldn't favor that. As far as if you're going to do it, I guess we should definitely have some licensing and regulation. When you were putting up the ones that we're doing already, those seemed to be pretty reasonable, really, and protects our neighborhoods and everything, and this seemed okay. I definitely don't want to purchase the iCompass module. I think Paul kind of already showed us that they were supporting that very much. I think a lot of those $75 a year tax receipts to pay that $7,200. So. That's all I had.
I do imagine probably a fair number of HOAs prohibit you from doing that anyway, so that might eliminate a lot of your concern. Any other comments or questions? Mike?
I think I understand this, Paul. So if the owner of the house lives there and goes on vacation and rents out their house for their vacation alone, that's not going to trigger needing a license, correct? I think the way this
they're
is
renting, if the house becomes then a rental where they're entering into a rental agreement, then then they would get a license.
Right, so a friend of mine was out of town for Thanksgiving and put it on Airbnb once. He still lives at his house, he's just gone for that week.
Right.
He doesn't get a license. The proposal is if you don't live there and you rent out your house, is that,
Is that
No, I
right?
think
If you're gonna do any renting.
if you're gonna do any renting? So if I want to rent my house
on
once
a
on
short-term
B&B.
basis.
Okay, on a short term, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying that, yeah.
Yeah, if you do the long-term, if you don't live there and you're doing a long-term rental, no, or if you have a room that or two rooms that you're renting out to two individuals and your lease terms are 6 months or a year or something like that, you wouldn't be registering as a single-family rental. It'd just be if you're basically using it for like a commercial
Okay.
type reason.
Okay, yeah, that helps, thank you. So one other question, I've not used these apps. Is it like Uber where all the payment goes through the app? Are they allowed to add this additional transient
Yes.
guest tax on there?
Yes.
Okay,
And that's what Airbnb is doing now, at least in the state of Kansas. They'll do that, but they may not collect the transient guest tax, but that's what we can enter into the agreement with Airbnb to do, and then they automatically trigger it. It's the other accommodation brokers that don't have those types of agreements that I think it's important to educate. If we go this route, we educate the lessor that you need to collect these types of taxes.
okay, thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, and when I was making my comments, I wasn't referring to one specific type of thing. That's when you trade homes for a vacation or something.
Oh,
And somebody in Palermo wants to come up here and stay in Shawnee for some unknown reason. And our guy's gonna go down and live in Palermo for a couple of, I mean, that type of thing is kind of between two parties, and I wouldn't see that as being part of this. So
No.
I don't think that would impact on those folks if they want
No, I
to do
think
that.
that's just a house share or whatever.
I don't know what you call that, but I mean, it would seem like we wouldn't bother with that.
any other discussion from the council? All right, thanks, Paul. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, I would love direction from the body. It sounds like if it's not broke, don't fix it. Is our general, we're good with the system as it is now?
Must get a lot more pressure than we have now. I mean, it's kind of like a non-problem right now.
All right. I imagine we don't need a motion for steady state, so we are good on that item, and that concludes our agenda. I will accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.